The sun was
is
just coming up when
unacceptable.
blue light
You
started
need to
flashing
leave
across Harper Lake,
immediately.
reflecting like diamonds on the water. My son Luke stood on the shore with a fishing rod in his hand, looking confused when a police car pulled up. I didn't have to guess twice. This had Karen from the HOA written all over it. Karen, our neighborhood's self-appointed dictator, stood there in her wide-brimmed hat, lips pressed together like she'd tasted something sour. She pointed at Luke and started demanding fines and the confiscation of his fishing rod. She had no idea what was coming. Luke wasn't just out here casting a line for fun. He'd recently come back from college, stepping into his well-earned position as Chief Wildlife Warden for the entire county. And yes, that meant this exact lake technically fell under his authority. The whole scene would have been hilarious if it wasn't so infuriating. This lake wasn't HOA territory. My great-grandfather had constructed the dam here back in 1874. Our family hadn't just owned this water, we'd protected it for almost 150 years. Yet Karen, who'd only moved in 5 years ago, loved bossing people around like she was Napoleon with a clipboard. When the officer walked forward, he looked uncomfortable. Karen snapped, "He's trespassing. Take that fishing pole right now." My patience was wearing thin, but instead of losing it, I motioned for Luke to handle it. Luke walked calmly toward the officer. "I'm Luke Harper, Chief Wildlife Warden for Carson Valley County. I'm conducting an official population survey on these waters. This is also my family's private property." He offered to get his credentials from his truck. That hit the officer like a thunderbolt. His eyes went wide, a chief warden standing on his own family's lake. Suddenly, Karen screaming about HOA regulations looked less intimidating and more, well, absurd. Karen stammered, "He's lying. No kid is a chief warden. This lake is HOA property." I couldn't hold back a laugh. "Karen, your HOA handbook doesn't trump county records or 150 years of property deeds. My son outranks your rule book by law." The officer stood straighter, clearly on our side. "Ma'am, filing false reports is serious. If his credentials check out, you might be the one in trouble." Karen froze, her red lipstick quivering into silence. For once, her grip on control loosened, and that's when I realized we weren't just dealing with petty HOA nonsense. We were heading into a full-blown fight for truth, history, and home. I looked Karen in the eye, voice steady. "Set foot on this property again, and you'll answer to the sheriff. This is the Harper family's lake, not HOA territory." Luke added, badge catching the sunlight. "And right now you're interfering with official wildlife monitoring. One more step, and it's harassment on record." For a brief moment, the mighty HOA board stood silent. Karen's knuckles went white on her clipboard, but her troops looked ready to back down. "We'll see you in court," she spit out, turning away. And that was fine with us, because in court, facts matter, and facts were on our side. Karen wasn't kidding. Days later, a letter with a gold seal arrived, a $1,000 fine and an order to attend an emergency HOA meeting. "Their big trial," I muttered, flipping through it. Luke smirked. "Let's bring everything. Deeds, county stamps, even Grandpa's letters. She wants a show? We'll give her one." The community hall was buzzing when we walked in. Neighbors watched like spectators at a prize fight. Karen stood front and center with Dalton, beaming like royalty ready to crown herself. "Unauthorized fishing, illegal dock, HOA aesthetics violations," Dalton declared. I set our folder on the table. "Harper Lake is documented by county law since 1874. Your rules stop at our property line." Karen sneered. "Those dusty papers don't matter. This lake affects property values. We have authority." That's when Luke stepped forward, displaying his badge. "I'm not just a fisherman. I'm County Chief Wildlife Warden enforcing environmental law. Touch this lake or interfere with me, you're the one breaking the law." Gasps spread through the neighbors. I laid out certified deeds and documents, each stamped and signed. Dalton examined one, his face draining of color instantly.
These weren't family mementos, they were legal evidence. Karen sputtered, gasping at theatrics. "We still vote. This board decides what harms the neighborhood." Luke chuckled, shaking his head. "That old dock? It's a historic landmark. Ugly to you, maybe, but older than every house in this development. If you don't like the view, look somewhere else." Laughter broke out. Even board members grinned. Karen turned bright red, glaring daggers as Dalton cleared his throat. "Karen, these are official documents. We can't enforce rules on private land." "No!" she shouted, stumping her heel. But the room had turned. The board members, one by one, agreed with Dalton, unwilling to follow her into obvious failure. Karen, embarrassed but defiant, finally hissed, "This isn't over." She marched out, purse swinging. I glanced at Luke. "Well, son, we didn't just win the room. We ended the argument." Luke smiled, steady and proud. "We didn't change the rules, Dad. We just reminded them of the truth." In that hall, under buzzing fluorescent lights, the HOA's imaginary rulebook had collapsed before history and law. In the days after, HOA gossip went quiet. Karen's meltdown at the board meeting left her alone. Neighbors who usually avoided us now waved and smiled, some even confessing Karen had pressured them into complaints. But her silence was misleading. One morning, another formal notice came, this time a sheriff's complaint. But Sheriff Reynolds, my cousin, called me laughing. "Harper, we're not entertaining her nonsense anymore. If she keeps filing bogus reports, she'll be fined for harassment." That was a turning point. For the first time, the law wasn't just on our side, it turned against her. Karen had burned through her power on empty threats, and her arsenal was depleted. Then a letter came directly to Luke from the County Wildlife Department. It established Harper Lake as an official protected site under his jurisdiction. Translation: the HOA could never interfere again without risking real criminal charges. Luke held that letter like a trophy. His legacy had just been written into law. That night, we sat by the old dock, moonlight shimmering across waters Samuel Harper had created a century and a half ago. Luke cast a line and smiled. "You know, Dad, I always saw this lake as just a fishing spot. Now, I understand it's who we are." I nodded, proud beyond measure. "Exactly. This isn't about rods or docks. It's about family, truth, and knowing what's worth fighting for." Weeks later, peace finally came back to Harper Lake. No SUVs appeared in our driveway, no fines showed up in our mailbox. Even Dalton backed off, apologizing awkwardly. Karen, word was, got fined for her false complaints, and though she still brooded behind curtains, her voice no longer carried influence. Neighbors started stopping by, not with complaints, but with cornbread, brisket, and gratitude. Mrs. Henderson, who'd lived here long before Karen, said softly, "She picked the wrong family to push around. You reminded everyone we don't have to be scared of her." Luke grinned, humble but proud. "We just wanted to protect what's ours." And that night, sitting under a sky full of stars, I realized something significant. This battle wasn't just about stopping Karen. It was about teaching my son the lesson every Harper had known. Protecting what matters isn't just duty, it's who we are. Long after Karen fades in the memory, Harper Lake will stand calm and steady, carrying our reflection into the future.